All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Austin Beaty, if you didn't know me. I've been asked, and it's been on my mind for some time, to share a testimony. And I wanna label this testimony because I think if we assign it a name, it becomes valuable. Not that it is invaluable without a name, but we'll label this "Send Me." And I'll lead to you with a verse for the day of Isaiah 6:8. This is also, I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" Then said I, "Here am I, send me." Now I think that means a lot. I think that means you should be bold enough to stand for the righteousness of God, if he was righteous enough to stand for you and sacrifice for you. That's just my personal belief. I think many would agree with that, though, just not to touch on to stomp on any feelings or anything like that. Now, I do have some thoughts organized, so if you find me looking down quite often, it's just to keep myself in order, because sometimes linear logical things just don't take place, and I don't stay linear. I stay a lot more illogical. So, testimony. It's November 15th right now. We're just getting ready, waiting for the Fisherville Expo Center True Grit Rodeo, True Grit Shootout tonight. Myself and Pastor Scott have spoken with each other today after a long conversation of us, I think, just chatting about life. Come to the consensus that maybe it's time, and it may be therapeutic for me, selfishly for me, and hopefully therapeutic for all of you, that this message reaches, and I hope that it does. That is my hope. With this testimony, let me preface this by saying this is not looking for accolades or any sort of reprisal at worst case, or it's not made to fluff up the name of anyone, certainly myself. I hope that this reaches you and lets you know you, A, are not alone, B, God loves you. He loves you so much, and C, and I say this lightly, but I mean it with full severity, that Pastor Scott is there to do his job for you, and allow him to do that. Again, our pastor is Scott Hilgendorf, and I'm sure that he wouldn't mind you reaching out to him. So let's begin this testimony, please. So I've organized some thoughts here, and my first bullet point will be, what made me believe? I don't remember the specific age. I'm going to say I was around 9 years old. What I can vividly remember was standing outside we had a burn barrel where I remember my childhood in Concord, Virginia, on Red Oak School Road. We had a burn barrel, and I was standing outside as a 9-year-old kid would. I think I was playing with a stick, beating the barrel with a stick after I just got done with my chores, or right before I did my chores. But there was a barn in there somewhere where I definitely cleaned some stalls. And this profound thought entered my head of what happens when we die. And it upset me. It upset me a lot. So I ran back inside and asked my mother, "Mom, what happens when we die?" And she told me, "Well, we go to heaven." Well, as we know, there's a lot of stuff between A and Z. There's a lot of stuff in the middle that should be accomplished, and you are going to experience, and as you should experience. So, I believe in the bluff. That's the bottom line up front. And the bottom line of this message is send me, right? But the bluff. So I'll explain things with a lot of metaphors. I do. It's just what I'm used to. Jesus spoke in parables. I'm not comparing myself to Jesus whatsoever. What I am saying is I speak in a lot of metaphors because it's the way that the Army conditioned me to speak. So the bluff is the bang. Everything left of it is the prior events leading up to the bang. Everything right of it is the events afterwards. So everything left of the bang right now, events prior, okay? My childhood. Well, first let's revert back. Aside from anything else, the bang, which would be, quite frankly, if this is a hard conversation for you to listen to, I apologize, but it needs to be said. While assigned as an infantry squad leader to an infantry company in Bedford, Virginia, I found one of my soldiers, a son to a father who was also serving. I found him deceased from a self-inflicted gunshot wound in my armory. And up to this point, that was one of the most prolific moments in my life. Really, it was, and it was astounding, the things that happened after that. So that's the bang. That's the metaphoric bang. So, okay, right now. Everything left of the bank, again, prior events. My childhood. Did I have everything I needed as a child? Yeah. I think there's a song out there that all the best cowboys have daddy. I don't know where that song came from. I think I ran across it on the Google one day, the Google. My childhood was not great. There was, and again, if this is uncomfortable for you, I apologize. My childhood wasn't great. It was filled with some sexual trauma, some sexual abuse, not from my mother, and I won't name any names, but it was there, and it was prevalent, and it damaged me, sure enough. And it echoes still in my relationships today. Just ask any of my unfortunate ex-girlfriends or ex-wife. Yeah, and we'll get to that later as well. It was bad. Did I have everything I needed? Absolutely. My mother was a great provider, but I was essentially raised by my mother. And I know that's such a cliche story. You hear these single mothers raising these children. Well, she was dealing with a lot of her own issues too, wasn't she? I think that should be considered as well. So, I think it was around the age of 12, she divorced from her first husband. Now, fast forward. I began rodeoing at the age of 12. My mother was not pleased about it. I'm a first-generation rodeo cowboy, contrary to any belief or I don't know if I've ever shared that or lied to anyone about it. If I did, I apologize, but I don't think that I did intentionally. I started riding bulls at Bull Buckingham Boonesboro, just on the Bedford County line. So essentially everything that has conditioned my life has been revolving around where I've lived in Bedford. We had a bull riding that was 20 minutes from the house. There were schools there that taught by Daniel and David Gaither, who taught me the necessities and the basics of rodeo and riding bulls. You can guess the rest of the story. It just progressed. It took me a very long time to progress to the level that I'm at now. And I'm not saying that I am good, because I'm not. Am I confident in my abilities? Absolutely, but I'm not great. And I do desire to be. So let me say that. I'm not going to quit until the goals are accomplished. Okay, enough said about that. Fast forward. I joined the military at 17 years old. Again, family probably not happy about that. Now, that is no surprise to my family. My mother was Navy. She was Navy military police and intelligence analyst, I do believe, or a direct fire coordinator. I can't remember. She did work on a ship, so there's that. My father was a Marine. I'm a product of sex out of wedlock, and that's okay. I think that you can still be a blessing no matter what your situation or conditions are. So I joined the Army at 17. And the only reason I joined is because I got injured the day before my senior year, National High School Finals Rodeo. I rodeoed all through high school, and I joined in 2005, their Junior Rodeo Association. So I got injured in Gordonsville, Virginia, on a rainy night, on a Red Bull with a white face. I can't remember his brand, his number, but he injured me. Pretty traumatic head trauma, so a mild TBI, to say the least. I caught a horn to the back of the head right there at your occipital bone. And it really screwed me up for a little while, as we all are aware of the nature of concussions now and concussion protocol and standards as they should be followed. So I joined because I thought there was no hope, and I didn't have anything to do for 3 months, and I do have a condition of OCD, so I get these compulsive thoughts in my head that I'm not going to last, I can't make anything of myself, I need to do something. And I knew that my mother did not have a lot of money, her new husband did not have this totalitarian amount of money to just give me to go to college, and I needed to be able to pay for college, and that was my goal. So I joined the Army. I graduated basic training in October 9th, 2009. January 2010, I deployed to Iraq. We had a 60-day short notice notification of sourcing from Louisiana to provide them an infantry battalion, which I am an infantry, 11 Bravo, true and blue. I do have I have another MOS, but that one was my true blue. So, deployed to Iraq. Now let's talk about that in 2010. We hit boots on ground somewhere in the springtime. I truly don't remember because it was such a blur, but we hit the ground in, I really want to say it was May. That's bothering me. I want to say it was May, but I knew that we were over there sometime in that time frame. I want to talk just briefly for a sec of what it takes for an 18-year-old boy, I say that and I mean that, boy, that every time he leaves the wire, this proverbial wire that we call it, which is you exiting your safe space. I don't like that word. I'm sorry. Your safe rally point, to say the least, where you sleep, where you lay your head, where you should feel the safest while in a forward deployed area. Once you leave that compound, that central operating base or forward operating base, a FOP, COP, things like that, what it takes for an 18-year-old boy to come to terms that this is very well going to be the last time that you are seen alive and the last time you exit that wire safely, and you may not re-enter it. So that is just a stressor number one. And again, this message, and please don't do this. This message is not an expression to receive thanks for service. It's not at all. That's not what this is intended for. This is for you. I hope that it reaches you in some way, something that is said or something that Pastor Scott can elaborate on for you more, or even if you need to talk to me, that's fine. I just want this to help you. So, while my battalion did not see any loss of life, there were loss of life throughout the brigade that we supported. Again, remember they notified us of sourcing that they needed an infantry battalion. Our battalion did not lose any service members. Did we see combat? Yeah, we saw combat, but it wasn't to the level of like the invasion into Fallujah or the Ramadi provinces and things like that. You know, your occasional small arms fire. Mortar fire was rampant when we were there. They just would mortar fire us, and if you don't know what a mortar is, just run it past Google one time, or be careful. I don't know. Somebody may be listening to, or you're watching what you're putting in, but they would mortar us often, and the most deadly course of action over there at that point, in regards to significant actions, was IEDs and EFPs. IEDs are improvised explosive devices, and EFPs are they're formed projectiles. So they did a lot of damage to convoys and the movement of troops, as you can imagine. So all of this is anecdotal evidence again, but this is just my testimony. This is just me just stating to you that these are the events that happened. Again, anecdotal evidence. So after the 2010 deployment, I made it home. Thank God, praise God, right? I made it home alive. But I met a woman on my deployment. And I think it's specific to say I met this woman and only did this because of events that took place during my deployment. Unfortunately, some family members had taken a substantial amount of money from me while I was deployed. Because I don't have access to checks or things like that. I don't need anything while I'm deployed. So there's no need for me to have a checkbook, a credit card, any of that information that could be, if I were to be captured, used to find my family or cause financial harm or stress to my family if a bad person with ill intentions were to find that or capture me at worst case scenario overseas. So some horrible things happened during that deployment. And it really made me question trust for my family. So I met a lovely young lady July. I came home for 2 weeks of leave, R&R, from Iraq, and I met my first wife. We were married October 9th, 2010. So my deployment was short, 6 months. That was, of course, during the Obama administration, the drawdown, so we were brought home early. Should I have married this woman? I probably should not have. But I was so infatuated with the idea, and there was nothing, there's no blame to put on her. A lot of this was me trying to be a 19-year-old husband. I didn't seek God first. I sought lust first. And she was beautiful. So I lusted after her, and it really, really, really destroyed me. The divorce was disgusting. It was horrible. Some things were said that were metaphorically daggers in each other's backs that I should have never said to her, that she should have never said to me. I left January of 2011 to go to Oklahoma for state horseshoeing school, and that's when she sent me divorce paperwork, which was probably, that distance between us really probably was resounding and good for us. It was probably the best thing that could have happened. So, between 2011, 2013, 14, I bounced around to a lot of Army schools. I still rodeoed here and there, but I didn't take it seriously. And I, of course, would hear the things, you're talented, why are you wasting it? Well, I didn't really think that there was a real future in rodeo for me because I did not see any prolific accomplishments. I had won 2 buckles to that point. My first buckle I won when I went to that school. When I started riding at 12 years old, I won it. And there were other people there. Obviously, I didn't just win it by showing up, but I won that one. I rode the very first bull I ever got onto the whistle. And then I won a buckle in 2007. Yeah, at an intermediate at that series, bullbucking in Boonesboro. So I was okay. I was decent in my own mind. But that's what anxiety and depression do to you, right? They self-inflict your own conscience, and they make you believe you're unworthy. So maybe that had a lot to do with it. I don't know. All right, so between those years, bounced around a lot of Army schools, had a lot of great training. Squad Designated Marksman course, I think, was one of the best schools I've ever been to. You know, you really expand on the capabilities of the Army's arsenal of weapons and your ability to fire that weapon out to really long ranges. So not sniper school, don't say that, that's incorrect terminology, but I did go to a very advanced marksmanship school. Rappel master, where I get to kick people out of helicopters and let them rappel down on ropes off of towers. I went to air assault school, which is the air assault operations for just this broad spectrum of infantry operations as it relates to air assault and the use of rotary wing aircraft. Combatives courses, so your mixed martial arts as it applies to saving your life in combat and hand-to-hand combat. That's what they used to call it in the old days. And numerous other courses. I joined the specialized warfare unit, not special forces. I was not. The specialized warfare unit that specifically dealt with counterterrorism for a while from 2012 to 2014. And then, leading up to that, I became a law enforcement officer. That time was spent during active duty time. All those schools and that specialized warfare unit was active duty time. I came back to traditional guard soldier, which we call M-Day. I don't know what that stands for, but it's traditional guardsman. I became a law enforcement officer for Bedford County Sheriff's Office. So during that time, you can imagine I saw a lot of horrible things. I was in a very bad relationship at that time. Of course, again, I won't name any names. It was a bad relationship. It didn't need to take place. We should have said our goodbyes long before we let it get to the point of the yelling and the screaming and all of that. So all of that to say that I was not a good boyfriend either. I was not good to her. And in the midst of all of this, I was still trying to maintain a career, as a law enforcement officer. So you have to be careful. There are some things that really matter as a law enforcement officer. You can't beat somebody. Certainly your girlfriend, wife, spouse, significant other, boyfriend, whatever have you. But the things that I saw as a law enforcement officer, a lot of death. While I was there were 2 officer-involved shootings, one of which I was a part of specifically, and witnessed that person expire. It's just horrible. I saw a lot of natural death too, a lot of attempted suicides, things like that. And yeah, did they bother me? Absolutely, but I could remove myself. I could detach myself from that scenario, right? You would think so. Okay, so left that sheriff's office. It was just due to complications and pay. Truthfully, I just couldn't afford to live off of that salary. And I really enjoyed the job. It was so much fun. But again, bull riding was put on the back burner for that. Secondary to everything. When those were the best years of my life, that was 20 to 25, that I spent just essentially pissing away, if we're just being truthful. Now, my second deployment to the UAE, we'll call it that. I don't really like saying where we were. It wasn't a super sexy mission anyways, if that makes sense. I experienced a lot of things, obviously as my law enforcement time, but on my second deployment, a resounding thing that happened to me, I really mean appalling as opposed to resounding, is my aunt committed suicide. And I obviously flew home for that to be with her, to watch her be buried and try my best to console the family. So suicide, man, it's rampant. And as you well know, in the Army and across the Department of Defense wide, we're talking 22 a day. That is astounding numbers. Astounding. Topic for another time. All right. We came back from our deployment, which was a 10-month deployment total. All in all, I think by the time everything was settled, the dust settled from that. So returned from that deployment. For some reason, I don't know what the conditions are in the battalion, and I can only speak for me and my men. Our battalion was plagued by suicide, at least 4 suicides in our battalion. And a battalion is immediate to the company. So it goes battalion controls the companies, companies control the platoons, platoons control the squads, teams, things like that. So the company, our battalion as a whole, we deploy together. That's our unified effort, is what our battalion achieves or does not achieve. So our battalion was plagued by suicide. At least 4. And that's a high number for one battalion. And we didn't have that rough. I'm not saying that what they did was incorrect or correct, but they were facing something that they couldn't make sense of. And that's what depression and anxiety and OCD and post-traumatic stress disorder, that's what they do to you. So, one of those suicides is the bang, right? We discussed that earlier. So the bang, it's not to be used as a play on words. And I mean that. And I mean that severely. With every bit of severity that it can mean, I mean that. It's not a play on words. It's rather a metaphor. And it should be used as such. So the bang was when my soldier, again, I won't name any names for the respect of his family and his service to his country. The soldier was having some issues that we didn't know about until after the fact, right? Right of the bang, correct. We didn't know about these issues that he was having. And it's not because we didn't ask. We asked. Could we have asked more? Yes. I was his squad leader. So one of his immediate supervisors is team leader, and I am in charge of the 2 team leaders in my squad. We noticed something was wrong. It turned out something was very wrong. This service member had a horrible childhood and led to some things that he should not have been partaking of in the law's eyes, obviously. And I think in just a sound person's mind, shouldn't have been partaking of those things and doing those behaviors. And all I really wanted to do was just help him out of that. That's what anybody wants to do. But hindsight is always 20/20. And we learned that hard lesson time and time again with each suicide. So this soldier's father put out a missing persons report on him because we couldn't find him. It was the day after I returned from Cowtown Rodeo on a Saturday. We drove all night because it's a long drive to New Jersey and back. And Sunday morning we started looking for him, and I advised his team leaders, well, find him. Do whatever you have to do to find him. That's my job as a supervisor, to give the command and then go help execute that command. I said, go find him, and I will start looking for him too. Well, I didn't. I didn't get up. I didn't get off the couch. I was very tired. Is that an excuse? Absolutely not. And I'm torn by it every day. We did find him late that night after we looked for him all day. A friend of mine who I used to work with at the sheriff's office, who worked for the Bedford County Police Department at the time, different from the sheriff's office, he called me and he said, hey, Austin, what do you know about this? I said, I don't know, but I have a sneaking suspicion that I need to go and try to find him at this location, which was our armory, our safe haven. That's where we come and we consolidate, we meet before we go and execute training. And walked in with the officers. I walked in first, and I found him in our break room, in our recreation room, with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to his head. So you can imagine the trauma. I think my response as soon as I found him, when you see that, with your training and experience as a law enforcement officer and seeing the traumatic things of war as well, I knew what had happened. I didn't have to check for sign of life. I knew what had happened. I think I holstered I didn't draw my weapon. I think that I took my ball cap off. I think that I had, which is rare, right? I don't ever wear a ball cap. One of you guys ever see me, but I threw that across the room, and I threw the door open almost off of its hinges. I was so upset and angry, and then I went and proceeded to clear the rest of the armory just to ensure that there was no foul play, right? So me and another police officer, cleared the rest of the armory room by room just to make sure there was no foul play, and there wasn't. So that's the bang. So the timeline of events, we've covered everything left of the bang prior to bang. Now here we are. Now we're going to cover everything right of the bang, which is events after. As most of you know, I've had great success in the sport of rodeo, in the PRCA, some SEBRs here and there, and that's been the focus of my main effort of focus is the PRCAs and things like that, and making SEBR finals and to such. I had great success with it over the years, 2017, 18, and 19, and then things started falling downhill after this bang. So the timeline of events is showing that this was a significant impactor to my readiness, my ability to operate and function as a machine, as a human. That winter was a rough winter, obviously. I think anyone that knew me and knows me knows that I was pretty isolated throughout the winter. And I'm sorry, I forget the length of this video. I want to cover a lot of things, and I hope that you stick around and watch it all. Leading into the spring, getting ready for Ram National Circuit Finals rodeo, which is, you know, the poor man's NFR, down in Kissimmee, Florida. We were practicing on practice bulls. Oh no, this was after that. But anyone who knows me right now knows that Julie is my fiance, and she'll tell you that I called her, Julie Perbula, sorry, I called her every day traveling down to Ram National Finals, and I was telling her how upset I was and how unconfident in myself I was. And I showed up down there, and just, if anybody who has that manic depression knows the feeling, your gut feels empty, your minds feel confused, and you feel like you can't form thoughts, like as if you're losing your mind completely, like as if it's turning to mush right before you. And that's what I felt, and I couldn't explain it. I could not explain it. I knew that I had anxiety from childhood, and I had been treated and medicated for it, but I didn't. I mean, I guess it all comes together in the form of anxiety, depression, all of that can be formed together because it's so generalized and so unknown still in the sense of treatment. Very general treatment. There's no specific down to the aegis sort of treatment yet. So all through that, after the spring, I was hospitalized April 1st, 2019. Yep. April 1st, 2019. Yep. To inpatient hospitalization for mental health. So what most would call the mental facility, you know, the loony house, whatever they call it, whatever name, conventional, unconventional name they want to call it, was hospitalized. And that was very embarrassing, very vulnerable feeling to be a law enforcement officer before who used to bring those poor souls into that facility to seek treatment. And I never judged them. I empathized with them and sympathized. I want them to get the help that they need, but some of them cannot help what they suffer from, what condition that ails them. So that was a very vulnerable feeling to be in there, to be of sound mind, sort of, I guess, and attend all of those classes and the clinics and every clinician in the world coming in to see you and asking you about your condition. It's a very vulnerable feeling. Did it help? I think it offered perspective. I think they didn't know how to treat, you know, in the realm of things, my minor disorder. So that is a testimony right now, and everything pretty much up to right of the bang after the fact, right? Do I still suffer with these manic episodes of anxiety and depression? It's manageable now. I've been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, general anxiety disorder, depression, and OCD. And anybody who knows me know that I probably do have a little OCD. It gets bad sometimes. But the greatest part about it all of this anecdotal evidence, is God remained faithful the entire time. I did not kill myself because I prayed to the Lord God to help me, to give me the strength, to insert people into my life, which they did, the hospitalization, the people that would always ask me, can I pray for you? And take that to heart. When somebody asks, can I pray for you? Yes, you can pray for me specifically in this manner, this manner, and this manner. And you do the same for them because that is the Lord's commandment. Love the Lord thy God and love thy neighbor. His faithfulness. And I want to cover one other thing, that stress that you feel every day, there's a healthy level of stress. What I mean is you need to face stressors in your life to feel the feeling of accomplishment once you overcome that stressor. It's such a good feeling, is it not, when you achieve your goals? And there's also that fine line of too much stress, which leads you to anxiety, depression, all of that. So my situation will be completely irrelevant to yours. But do take that stress as a sign from God, because you were promised that you are going to receive trials. You were promised that. So take joy, take great joy in it. That means you're a child of God, and He loves you for it. And thank you for remaining faithful in the Lord's service. So, in closing remarks, I would like to say and remind you of that verse, Isaiah 6:8. Also, I heard the voice of the Lord, saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then said I, Here am I, send me. That's bold. So what we've learned, what I've learned specifically, is from the Army to rodeo world, there's no difference as far as personalities, female and male. Type A, Army, Type A, rodeo. You could just Lego blocks them together and collaborate them and cross them one to the other, which is an amazing concept because you are so bold. So if you're going to be that bold, be bold and be strong. Tell the Lord, send me. And that means a broad spectrum of things, I think. Send me in the regards, let me help my neighbor. Send me in the regards, let me do the job that others won't. Send me, Lord, to do the right thing, even when nobody is watching, to always be bold in the name of God. I thank you, and I hope that this testimony reaches you in a positive manner. Again, I do not want to receive any messages thanking for service or any sympathy. This is not what this was intended for. What this was intended for was to direct you to someone who can help you. And if that person be me, you trust me with that information, give it to me. I'm going to give it right to Pastor Scott. We're going to work together to help you out. I hope this information was helpful. I pray for you all. I love you all. God loves you more, and always remember that, okay? I hope you guys have a great rest of your night on this beautiful day. Wherever you are, boots in necks, guys, girls, run fast and execute the plan that you've already had placed before you load that horse in the trailer, okay? Thank you, guys. I love you. God bless you.